Welcome to another Business Leaders Cyber Briefing from Cool Waters Cyber. I'm Trish.
And I'm Tom.
And today we're going to do a deep dive into a topic that's making waves in the cyber world, passkeys.
Right.
We're talking about ditching those pesky passwords altogether and embracing a future where logging in is more secure and more convenient.
It's a big shift and, one that's becoming increasingly important.
Yeah.
Especially with, the updated Cyber Essentials standards coming into play.
Exactly. So this episode is all about giving you, our listeners, the insights you need to understand passkeys, how they work, why they matter to your business, even if you're not a tech expert.
Exactly.
And how they fit into these new Cyber Essentials guidelines that are coming out.
Right.
We're going passwordless, folks, and we're going to break it down.
Yeah.
So, Tom, let's start with the basics.
Right.
What exactly is a passkey? I mean, can you explain it in plain English without, getting too technical for our business leaders out there who maybe, they don't live and breathe cyber like we do?
Sure. Imagine unlocking your online accounts in the same way that you unlock your phone every day. Using your fingerprint, maybe facial recognition, or a simple PIN.
Okay.
That's essentially the core idea behind a passkey.
Interesting.
You're leveraging the security that's already built into your device.
Yeah.
Rather than relying on something that you have to remember.
Okay, that makes sense. But for those who might still be a bit hazy on the concept, can you give us a simple analogy?
Sure. You know how you have all those different passwords for all your online accounts?
Oh, yeah. Too many.
It's like having a giant key ring full of keys.
Right.
A separate one for every single door.
Yeah.
And you're constantly fumbling around trying to find the right one.
Yeah.
Passkeys are more like having a smart lock on your door.
Hmm.
It recognizes you.
Oh.
It knows who you are. So, it knows your unique biometric signature. It knows your trusted device. And that's how it grants you access.
So no more key ring full of 50 different keys.
Right. It's a much simpler way of managing access.
Okay, I see.
And, it's inherently more secure.
So what's happening in the background?
Right.
When we talk about these passkeys, what's the tech behind it that's making it more secure than the traditional passwords that we're all, kind of used to and probably frustrated with at this point?
Right. It's based on something called public key cryptography. When you create a passkey for a website or an app, your device actually generates a unique pair of digital keys.
Okay.
One of these keys is called the private key, and that stays safely locked on your device, whether it's your phone, your laptop, whatever you're using.
Okay.
And the other key is the public key.
Okay.
That gets registered with the website or app.
Oh, okay.
So when you want to log in later on, the website sends a secure request to your device.
Okay.
Kind of like a digital handshake.
Oh, okay.
And your device uses that private key to respond. Essentially saying, yes, it's really me. And the website can verify that response using the public key.
So it's like matching them up.
Exactly.
Okay.
If they match, then you're in.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And what's really important here is your actual password, the traditional shared secret, it's never actually transmitted.
Interesting. So this isn't something that's limited to one specific company or platform. Is there a standard that ensures these passkeys can work across different devices and operating systems?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
There's a standard called WebAuthn.
Okay.
It stands for Web Authentication.
Oh, okay.
And you can think of it as like the universal rule book for passkeys.
Oh, I see.
That allows different browsers, operating systems, websites, all to speak the same language.
Right.
So it means that a passkey that you created, say, on your Android phone, can also be used to log into a website on your Windows laptop.
Oh, that's really convenient. So how would one of our listeners' employees, set up a passkey? Is this something they typically find in their account settings?
Yes. When a website or an app supports passkeys, they'll usually find an option to create one in their security settings.
Okay.
And the process usually involves verifying their identity using their device's built-in security features.
Okay.
So, things like a fingerprint, Face ID, or maybe their device PIN or password.
Right.
And once that's set up, then logging in with a passkey in the future is, really straightforward.
Okay.
They just select their account and then use that same familiar unlock method.
Oh, that's nice. So we've talked about what passkeys are, how they work at a basic level, but let's get to the heart of the matter for our business leaders,
Right.
Why should they care about passkeys?
Right.
Why is this from a security perspective? Why are we making such a big deal out of these? What makes them more secure than those passwords we've been using for years and years?
So One of the biggest advantages of passkeys is their resistance to phishing attacks.
Oh, okay.
Because a passkey is uniquely linked to the specific website or app it was created for.
Yeah.
A fake website designed to steal your login credentials simply won't be able to use it.
Okay.
Your browser or operating system actually verifies the legitimacy of the site before it allows the passkey to be used.
Oh, I see.
So even if somebody accidentally clicks on a malicious link, they're still protected.
That's impressive. And, with phishing attacks becoming, so prevalent and so sophisticated these days, that's a huge win right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest benefits.
Okay. What else? I mean, is there anything else that makes them better than those traditional passwords?
So another big advantage is that passkeys eliminate shared secrets.
Okay.
With traditional passwords, both the user and the website know the password, right?
Right.
So if a hacker breaks into the website's database, then they can steal all those passwords.
Yeah, and then use them elsewhere. Yeah.
With passkeys, your private key never leaves your device.
Oh, okay.
So even if an attacker was able to break into the website's servers,
Right.
all they'd find is public keys.
Okay.
And those are actually useless without your private key. So a data breach on a service using passkeys is much less likely to lead to compromised accounts.
So what you're saying is if, one of the websites that our listeners' employees use, if that website gets hacked, it doesn't automatically mean that all of their employees' accounts on that site are going to be compromised if they're using passkeys.
That's correct.
That's a huge difference.
And, because passkeys aren't based on guessable strings of characters, they're also pretty much immune to brute force attacks.
Okay.
Where attackers use automated software to just try millions of different password combinations.
Right.
And since each passkey is unique to a specific website or app, it also prevents credential stuffing attacks.
Okay, and just remind our listeners what a credential stuffing attack is.
It's where attackers basically take stolen usernames and passwords from one compromised website, and then they just try those same credentials across lots of other different services.
Oh, so they're just throwing it at the wall and hoping something sticks.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do passkeys play with multi-factor authentication?
Right.
Or MFA,
right.
That added layer of security that we always talk about.
Well, a passkey can actually act as a strong multi-factor authentication in a single step.
Oh, interesting.
Because think about it.
Okay.
You unlock your phone using, say, a fingerprint or facial recognition.
Right.
That involves something you have, which is your phone, something you are, which is your biometrics, or maybe something you know, which is your PIN.
Okay, yeah.
Passkeys leverage these existing device security measures to essentially provide multiple factors of authentication without the need for, separate codes or apps.
Oh, that's very convenient.
It is.
Much more user-friendly than, typing in a password and then having to, pull out your phone and get a code from an SMS or an authenticator app every single time you want to log into something.
Right.
Speaking of SMS codes, are passkeys a more secure alternative to those as well?
Yes, definitely. While SMS codes are better than no MFA at all, they do have vulnerabilities.
Okay.
They can be intercepted. And attackers can also carry out SIM swapping attacks to try to gain access to those codes.
Okay.
Passkeys completely eliminate that risk because they don't rely on sending codes over potentially insecure channels.
That's good.
Yeah.
So by adopting passkeys, are you saying that businesses essentially become a less attractive target for hackers who are looking to steal login credentials on a large scale?
Yes, absolutely. Because they just make those databases so much less valuable to attackers.
Oh, okay.
Because the public keys alone are useless.
Right.
They need those private keys that are stored on each individual user's device.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how passkeys fit into the broader cybersecurity landscape,
Right.
Specifically looking at the UK's Cyber Essentials framework, which I know a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with.
Yeah.
So the National Cyber Security Center, or NCSC, which oversees Cyber Essentials, they've actually recognized the benefits of passkeys, haven't they?
They have.
Okay.
And in fact, in the updated Cyber Essentials standard that's coming into effect in 2025, they specifically acknowledge passwordless technology as an acceptable form of MFA.
Oh, that's a big deal. So businesses can actually use passkeys to meet the Cyber Essentials requirements.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's fantastic.
So the framework defines passwordless authentication as an authentication method that uses a factor other than user knowledge to establish identity.
Okay.
And that obviously includes things like passkeys.
Right.
And positions them as being on par with things like authenticator apps or hardware tokens. So it's a big step forward in recognizing the importance of these modern authentication methods.
Absolutely. So for our business leaders out there who, they're not necessarily tech wizards, how would their employees manage these passkeys across all their different devices? I mean, is this going to be a whole new management nightmare for them?
Well, the good news is that passkey management is actually often integrated into the devices and platforms they're already using.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, businesses using Apple devices,
Uh-huh.
iCloud Keychain can securely store and sync those passkeys across iPhones, iPads, Macs.
Oh, nice.
And then authentication is handled seamlessly using Face ID or Touch ID.
Okay.
And similarly, with Android devices,
Uh-huh.
they can often use Google Password Manager, which can sync passkeys across Android devices
Right.
when they're signed into their Google account.
Okay.
So if somebody creates a passkey on their work Android phone,
Right.
it can be available on their, maybe personal Android tablet as well.
Okay, that makes sense. And what if, an employee uses a mix of different operating systems? They've got like an Android phone for work and maybe they've got a Windows laptop at home. How do these passkeys work across those different platforms?
Well, this is where that WebAuthn standard that we talked about earlier really comes into its own.
Oh, okay.
In many cases, a user can initiate a login on one device
Right.
and then authenticate using a passkey that's stored on another device.
Oh, that's handy.
So, for example,
Yeah.
a website on a Windows laptop might display a QR code,
Right.
which the user can scan with their Android phone.
Oh, okay.
And the phone then handles the authentication using the passkey, and the laptop is logged in.
Okay.
And additionally, there are also dedicated password management solutions out there,
Uh-huh.
like 1Password,
Right.
Bitwarden, Dashlane.
Yes.
These are increasingly adding support for passkeys as well.
Oh, that's good.
And, these work across all major operating systems.
Right.
So it's another good option for businesses that, maybe have employees using lots of different devices.
So if a business leader is listening to this, and they want to start encouraging or maybe even mandating, the use of these passkeys,
Right.
what advice would you give them to pass along to their employees?
Right. Well, the first thing is, if they're already using a password manager across the organization,
Okay.
then they should definitely check if that supports passkeys
Uh-huh.
and, start using that functionality.
Right.
And, those who are relying on, maybe the built-in device password managers like iCloud Keychain or Google Password Manager,
Right.
they need to make sure that device syncing is enabled.
Uh-huh.
So their passkeys are available on all their different devices.
Okay, good point.
And crucially, everyone needs to be reminded to set up account recovery options
Oh, that's very important. Yeah.
for their operating system or password manager.
Right.
Because, this is essential if a device is lost or damaged.
Right. Exactly.
And it's also a good idea to encourage employees to start using passkeys on those services that they use most frequently.
Okay.
Things like their work email or cloud storage,
Right.
just to get used to the process.
Yeah, to get comfortable with it.
And finally, it's really important to manage expectations and just remind everybody that some older websites and apps might not support passkeys just yet.
Right.
So they will still need to have a way of managing those traditional passwords for a little while longer.
Okay. Good advice. Now, I'm thinking, what happens if an employee loses their phone and that's where they've been storing all their passkeys?
Right?
Is there a way to recover those?
Yes. Thankfully, there are pretty robust recovery mechanisms built into the passkey ecosystem.
Okay, good.
So for those operating system level managers like iCloud Keychain or Google Password Manager,
Uh-huh.
there are account recovery processes
Yeah.
that are tied to the user's overall account. So for example, with Apple, recovery might involve using their Apple ID password and potentially a trusted phone number for verification.
Okay.
And Google has its own account recovery procedures as well.
Right.
And then dedicated password managers also have their own specific recovery methods.
Okay.
So it often involves things like a recovery key or, other pre-configured options.
Okay.
But, the key thing is to emphasize the importance of setting up these recovery options before a device is lost.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's much easier to do it proactively.
Absolutely. I mean, that's good advice in general for anything, right? Like, set up your backup and recovery before you need it.
Right.
So we've talked about security benefits, but from a business perspective, what are the real, tangible benefits for like the business as a whole when it comes to implementing these passkeys?
First of all, that strong phishing resistance that we talked about
Uh-huh.
and, reduced risk of data breaches,
Right.
that directly translates into lower potential for financial loss,
Makes sense?
reputational damage.
Yeah.
And then for employees, it means faster, more seamless logins,
Oh, okay.
less frustration,
Right.
improved productivity.
Okay, that's good.
And it also often leads to a decrease in, those password-related IT support tickets.
Oh, that's a big win for the IT team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, frees up your IT team to focus on, more strategic things.
Okay, good.
And as we discussed earlier, it helps the business to meet those evolving cybersecurity standards, like cyber essentials.
Right.
And in the long run, it can lead to cost savings,
Okay.
compared to those traditional MFA methods, like those SMS one-time passwords.
Okay, so for a business leader who's thinking about, taking the plunge and starting to implement these passkeys, what would be like a sensible approach?
Well, the first step is to get a clear understanding of, which of their business applications and services support WebAuthn
Okay.
for Passkeys.
Okay.
And then they need to decide on their approach to passkey management.
Right.
Will they rely primarily on, those built-in capabilities on employees' devices?
Okay.
Or will they look at, maybe implementing a dedicated enterprise-grade password manager
Right.
that supports passkeys?
Okay.
And they also need to develop clear policies and procedures for passkey enrollment,
Uh-huh.
usage, and account recovery,
Right.
and then, provide training and support for their employees.
Okay.
And it's often wise to do like a phased rollout,
Okay.
maybe starting with a pilot group of users.
Uh-huh.
And they also need to explore how passkeys can be integrated with any existing single sign-on systems they might be using.
Okay.
And, we keep saying it, but make sure those robust account recovery mechanisms are in place from the start.
That is a really good point. I mean, that's something that we've emphasized throughout this entire conversation.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there is going to be some initial investment in terms of, planning and implementation, but like the long-term benefits seem to be, they're there.
Right. There will be some upfront effort,
Uh-huh.
but the potential for a reduction in security incidents,
Right.
improved productivity, lower IT support overhead,
Yeah.
it makes it a very worthwhile investment.
Okay, so let's put these passkeys into perspective.
Right.
Compared to like some of the other authentication technologies that are out there that businesses might be using,
Right.
how do they stack up?
So if we look at, how the different technologies compare, what really stands out about passkeys is that combination of high security,
Uh-huh.
particularly their phishing resistance,
Right.
and really high usability.
Okay.
Traditional passwords, as we all know,
Yeah.
they don't score well on security.
Right.
And they can be a real burden to use because we have
Yeah.
to remember all those things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then things like SMS, one-time passwords, and authenticator apps.
Right.
They're a step up in terms of security,
Uh-huh.
but they can still be vulnerable to certain attacks.
Okay.
And, they can be a bit inconvenient for users sometimes.
Okay.
Hardware security keys are another option.
Uh-huh.
They offer strong security similar to passkeys.
Oh.
But passkeys often provide a more seamless user experience
Oh, okay.
because they can leverage biometrics or, those PIN-based unlock methods
Uh-huh.
that people are already used to on their devices.
Right, right.
And, passkeys also eliminate the need for memorization,
Okay.
offer really fast login speeds,
Right.
good cross-device compatibility through, operating system or password manager syncing.
Okay.
And all of that comes at, a relatively low to moderate cost.
So, Tom, to wrap things up for our listeners today,
Right.
what's the key message that you want our business leaders to take away from this discussion about passkeys?
I think the key message is that passkeys represent a fundamental shift to a more secure and user-friendly future for online authentication.
Okay.
And, their security advantages, particularly that phishing resistance and their recognition in, standards like cyber essentials,
Yeah.
they make them a technology that businesses really need to be looking at.
Right.
Seriously.
Okay. And for business leaders, those benefits are really tangible. Stronger security, happier employees,
Right.
more productive employees,
Yeah.
potentially lower IT costs in the long run.
Exactly. Now is the time for them to start thinking about how to integrate passkeys into their security framework.
Right. I mean, the way we authenticate online is like rapidly evolving,
Yeah.
and this is like a key part of that evolution.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners out there, as you're thinking about the security of your business,
Right.
ask yourself, if passwords become a thing of the past,
Right.
are you ready? Are you ready for that more secure and seamless future?
Yeah.
And what steps can you take today to start making that transition within your own organization?
Right.
Really good questions for everyone to be thinking about. Well, thank you for joining us for this Cool Waters cyber briefing today. We hope you found it insightful.
Thanks for listening.